The incredible true story revealed how a vengeful woman changed lives forever in 1875. In the small town of Maplewood, a mother's heart beat like a drum of rebellion. Clara Caldwell, a resilient widow, poured all her love and strength into raising her two young children. The shadows of society whispered around her, dismissing her as just another struggling woman. But Clara had fire in her soul, ignited by the loss of her husband in a tragic mining accident. The townsfolk saw her merely as a seamstress, yet she was stitching together hope in every garment, every effort. Each morning, Clara hoisted the heavy weight of her sewing machine. As it clanked and whirred, so did the gears of her determination. She created gowns and trousers that brought joy to her customers but received little recognition in return. Like the clothes she made, she felt often overlooked, juggling her roles as mother, provider, and woman in a man's world. The town's oppressive spirit weighed heavier when she witnessed her friend James, a proud veteran, grapple with despair. A corrupt businessman loomed large over their community, cheating James out of what little he had left. Clara's heart clenched with indignation. How could they allow such injustice? As she watched him tremble with defeat, she felt something awaken inside her. A fierce protectiveness unfurling like wildflowers after a storm. The whisper of society pressed upon her, but Clara could not stand idle any longer. She began to plot. She'd rally the townsfolk, expose the dubious dealings, and reclaim dignity for the vulnerable. Her resolve surged as she took that first bold step, but the pushback was fierce. Townsfolk eyed her suspiciously. What does she know? They muttered. Even her own neighbors sidestepped her growing ambition, fearing the wrath of the social elite. Yet Clara pressed on, bolstered by the hope of sparking change. When her children caught wind of her struggles, their admiration ignited a flame within her. "We will stand with you, Mama," they shouted, eyes wide with unyielding courage. Unexpectedly, their friends began to gather, eager to support the movement Clara had birthed. The collective voice of children filled her with hope, a bubble of possibilities rising within her chest. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Clara prepared herself for the showdown at Town Hall, whispers swirled through the air like tornado winds. The stakes had never felt higher. Would her community, her lifeline, stand behind her? Or would the weight of tradition and fear crush her aspirations once more? Her heart raced as she stepped up to the podium, the room buzzing with tension. All eyes were on her, some hopeful, some skeptical. This was her moment, a chance for transformation, not just for her, but for Maplewood itself. Clara inhaled deeply, her breath trembling at the edge of cold fears and fiery dreams. Would the words she spoke have the power to change their hearts, or would they vanish into the void? The chance between silence and hope dangled precariously in the balance as she opened her mouth to reclaim her narrative. Clara's voice wavered at first, but she forced it to steady. "People of Maplewood." The words burst forth, filled with passion and urgency. She glanced at James, sitting at the front, his eyes glistening with trust. The sight of him gave her strength. "We've been treated unfairly, exploited by those who should protect us." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Faces reflected a swirl of emotions: curiosity, fear, and some glimmers of hope. Clara pressed on, heart pounding like a distant drumbeat. "We can't let fear rule our lives. We have the power to rise together." A few hesitant eyes met her gaze, and one by one, Clara saw them soften. The faces of her children flashed before her, their simplicity and innocence a reminder of why she was fighting. "We deserve better lives for our families. We deserve justice." The room fell silent, save for the flutter of nervous breaths. Clara pushed aside her doubts. Remember James? A hero who fought for us, abandoned by the very people he defended. She paused, letting that sink in, letting each heartbeat in the room echo the truth of her words. If we can't stand with him, who will stand with us? Slowly, a man in the back stood, his weathered hands trembling but his voice clear. She's right. I've seen too many good men brought low by that scoundrel of a businessman. Encouraged, others began to rise, chiming in with their own struggles. Clara could hardly believe it. This was the spark she'd hoped for, the flames of unity igniting just as she dreamed. The crowd swelled with a newfound courage, as they began to share their stories of injustice, their voices intertwining into a harmonious call for change. But just as a tide turns, it can retreat. Clara's exhilaration was shattered when the heavy oak door swung open. In strode Mr. Harrington, the businessman she had rallied against, arrogance radiating off him like a cold mist. His sharp eyes surveyed the gathering, and a smirk curled his lips. What's this? A little rebellion in my town? Gasps spread through the crowd. Clara's heart sank as Harrington's men filed in behind him, creating a wall of intimidation. Hesitation flickered among those who had mustered their courage just moments before. Clara stepped forward, her determination hardening like steel. We're not afraid of you, Harrington. We know the truth. Truth. He chuckled, a sinister sound that sent shivers down Clara's spine. And what do you plan to do with your little band of misfits? With every finger he pointed at her, Clara's blood boiled. Hatred mixed with a fierce hope ignited within her. She had to respond, to rally her people. We will take back our town. We'll shine the light on your corruption and demand the justice we deserve. The crowd stirred, the fight igniting anew amongst families long silenced. Clara could feel the strength pulsing through them. But still, a whisper of doubt followed her like a shadow. Would they find the courage to stand against this tyrant? Before she could settle the swelling tension, Harrington's laughter cut through the air. Then let us see how well your courage stands against my wealth and power. Caught in a maelstrom of rising anxiety and determination, Clara's resolve was tested. Could she use the strength of her community to withstand this threat? Or would fear pull her back into a world of silence and subjugation? As the room crackled with energy, Clara realized this confrontation was just the beginning. She was far from finished. Clara's hand shook as she gripped the podium, preparing for the waves ahead. What would the town choose when darkness loomed so close? And what price would she pay to reclaim their narrative? The moment hung in the air, heavy with possibility. What would become of Maplewood's fight for justice? Clara's heart raced as she stared down Harrington, the gasoline of his arrogance fueling the inferno rising within her. She took a deep breath, anchoring herself to the faces of her neighbors, her friends. Fear clawed at her throat, but she refused to swallow it. We're not just misfits, Harrington. We're the lifeblood of this town. We deserve to be heard. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd that she hadn't anticipated, a current of shared defiance drawing them together. But Harrington, undeterred, waved a dismissive hand. Heard? You're just a bunch of scared rabbits, shaking in your boots. You think your voices matter to me? He stepped closer, his eyes cold and dismissive. Clara felt the push of her own fury. You're wrong, she said, her voice breaking through the fear that gripped her heart. This town is our home, it's our way of life. And we've been strong enough to support each other through the darkest times, through the unfairness you've created. The crowd started to inch forward, emboldened by Clara's spirit. They raised their voices, and Clara could see others beginning to step out of the shadows of doubt. Let him hear us, shouted a woman from the middle, her voice steady. No more silence. No more suffering in shame. Encouraged, Clara pressed on, heat rising in her cheeks. All this time, we've been afraid to speak up, afraid to stand together. But today, we have to choose. Are we weak, or are we strong enough to fight back? A soft murmur of "We are strong" began to echo, almost as if they were testing the sound of their own conviction. Clara let the chorus wash over her, blending energy and hope into a fierce reckoning. In that charged moment, Harrington's sneer faltered. His men shifted uneasily, the air heavy with tension that threatened to snap. Clara's heart soared. This was their moment. Then Harrington lunged forward, his hand gripping the edge of the podium. "You think this is funny? You're playing a dangerous game, Clara. I can destroy you all." His voice boomed, but uncertainty edged the threat. "Go ahead, Harrington. You can try," Clara shot back, matching his intensity. "But we won't be quiet anymore. You've stolen from us too long, your time is over." She pointed toward the gathering crowd, standing strong against the looming storm of Harrington's influence. "Think of your families," she urged, "think of your children. They deserve better. They deserve a chance." The crowd erupted. A powerful wave of voices rose, fueled by the solidarity Clara had ignited. It surged through the room, lifting their spirits higher and higher, dousing the flames of fear Harrington had tried to kindle. But just as victory seemed within reach, an unexpected tremor rippled through the crowd. A voice emerged from the back, weak but cutting through the rally. "What if he has something on us? What if he threatens our livelihoods?" Silence fell, a thick cloud of doubt creating cracks in the unity they had fought hard to build. Clara's heart sank. She understood the weight of that fear, the fear that kept them from acting. It struck at the very core of their struggle. "Please," Clara pleaded, her voice softer but stronger now. "We all have fears of losing jobs, losing homes. But we've already lost so much. We can't allow Harrington to keep us in chains. We gather strength through our stories and our truths." Her words hung in the air, swirling with uncertainty. Would they stand together, or would they allow fear to claw them apart once again? A flicker of hope danced in the faces around her. Clara could see that they were still fighting, still hoping. But what would they ultimately choose? The moment felt pivotal, charged with the unspoken question: how far would they go to reclaim what was rightfully theirs? As she looked into their eyes, determination blazing, she knew this battle was only just beginning. Would they embrace the fight ahead together, or would the shadows whisper them back into silence? The stakes had never felt so high. As the silence lingered, tensions crackled like lightning in the thick, heavy air. Clara could feel all eyes on her, a weight she had never felt before, both exhilarating and terrifying. The murmur of doubt still hung over them, but the flickers of hope in the crowd shimmered like stars fighting to breach the darkness. "Listen to me," she cried, raising her hands as if to gather everyone's attention. "I know what you're feeling. Trust me, I feel it too. But look around. We've shared our lives here, our laughter and our tears. We've mourned together and celebrated triumphs. This town is more than bricks and dust, it's us. Together." Clara's voice was hoarse yet powerful, resonating through the gathered crowd. She could see the uncertainty starting to waver, small nods beginning to ripple out from the front row, like small waves lapping at a still shore. "Remember last winter?" she continued, urgency edging her tone. "When the snowstorm trapped us all for days? We didn't abandon each other. We shared warm meals, blankets, and stories. We stood by one another side by side. In that moment, we showed what community really means." A low sound, a murmur of recognition, spread through the crowd. Clara could see faces beginning to soften, eyes brightening as they recalled those moments that stitched them together. "What we have doesn't stop at our front doors," she pressed on. "There is power in our unity, in our courage to face the struggles ahead. Let love be our battle cry. Let us rise together to claim the future we deserve." It was as if a spark ignited among them, hands began to rise, fists clenching, hearts echoing a rhythm of resilience. One by one, they began shouting words of solidarity. "We are strong. rang out again, louder this time, reverberating through the room like a heartbeat. But then Harrington's face darkened. "You think you can threaten me with your little chance?" he yelled, eyes wild. The anger in his voice tried to drown their newfound strength, but Clara's belief surged stronger still. With a newfound determination, she stepped closer to the edge of the podium. "You can try to intimidate us, Harrington, but we aren't afraid anymore. We are not just shouting into the void, we are claiming our lives back, starting now." Within Clara, emotions raged like a tempest, a whirlwind of hope and fear, doubt and conviction. Harrington's sneer faltered, and for the first time, she saw a crack in his facade. The crowd took notice. They fed off Clara's fire, their energy rising like smoke in the air, carrying their hopes far above Harrington's threats. Each chant strengthened their resolve, bending but not breaking beneath the weight of his disdain. "What do we want?" Clara shouted, her voice rising above the frenzy. "Justice!" they roared back. "When do we want it?" she boomed. "Now!" came the thunderous reply. The wave of empowerment rolled through the crowd, a force that felt unstoppable. Clara could barely contain her excitement, but deep down, a nagging fear wrestled for attention. After today, would they stand firm, or would they falter once more in the face of Harrington's wrath? As the crowd's voices enveloped the room, Clara's heart swelled, but shadows lurked, whispering reminders of what was at stake. The risk weighed heavy. What if this victory was short-lived? 1,000 questions swirled within her mind, and still, she poured everything into the moment, striving to galvanize her neighbors against the coming storm. But deep inside, one simple truth remained: in the fight for a better tomorrow, everyone would need to take a stand, not just today, but tomorrow and the days after that. Would they find the strength to continue together against Harrington's mounting aggression, or would the fear that once bound them return to silence their voices once more? A voice shouted from the back, "What happens next?" Clara turned, her expression resolute. This was just the beginning, the dawn of their fight. Would they all have the courage to see it through? The answer loomed ahead like a shadow, waiting to be faced. Clara's heart raced as fear mingled with determination. The crowd's energy crackled, yet uncertainty clung to the air thick as fog. The question hung there, unanswered, but for her, it was a resounding call to action. This couldn't be a moment that faded into memory, it had to bloom into something tangible. "Together, we'll create a plan," she declared, her voice trembling with passion and urgency. "Tonight, we're going to gather in small groups, and we'll strategize. We'll draft letters, reach out to allies beyond our town, and hold peaceful demonstrations. We can show Harrington that we are united, that our voices fill the void he thinks he owns." The crowd erupted in murmurs, cautious glances exchanged between neighbors. Clara sensed the start of something big, yet doubt still skulked around the edges of her thoughts. She needed to plant seeds of trust deeper into their hearts. "Let us channel this energy," Clara urged. "I promise we'll keep the conversation alive, and your voices will echo far beyond these walls. This isn't just about today, it's about our families, our children, and the legacy we want to leave behind. We can no longer let fear navy our decisions." A young mother, her baby nestled close, stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "But what if he retaliates? What if he tries to hurt us in some way?" "I know," Clara replied, instinctively reaching out a hand. "Harrington is a bully, but bullies thrive on silence. If we stand together, we outnumber him. We won't be quiet anymore." As Clara spoke, she noticed the gears of hope turning in her neighbor's eyes. Faces transformed from fear to defiance. But the question, "What happens next?" still loomed heavily in the back of her mind, echoing through her thoughts. Would they truly gather their courage and fight, or would hesitance lull their flames? The discussion intensified. Strong voices rose in solidarity over others, each sharing tales of inspiration. An elder reminisced about their last town fair, where children danced and laughter filled the air. Clara coiled that into an idea, a gathering that would showcase their spirit to the world and remind them of their shared joys. "We'll host a community day," she exclaimed, her excitement spilling over. "A day that celebrates what we've built together. We'll decorate the town, share stories, and show Harrington that our bond can't be broken." The wave of enthusiasm was contagious. Clara felt the air shimmer with hope. But still, the shadow of Harrington loomed, an invincible specter eager to strike back. What would he do in response to her rallying of the town? "Let us meet in my backyard tomorrow at sunset," she instructed, knowing this was just the first step into their new reality. "I'll have coffee, and everyone can share ideas. We can combine our strengths and our creativity." As the crowd began to disperse, Clara could see flickers of determination lighting their faces. This was only the beginning, they had to be ready for what lay ahead. But even as excitement swirled, a gnawing worry burrowed deeper within her. Harrington was a man who wouldn't just sit back quietly. The question remained, what retaliation was he planning? Clara feared it might come when they least expected it, potentially ripping apart the delicate seams of hope they were weaving together. "Stay vigilant," she whispered to herself, knowing this wasn't a single battle but rather a war that would require relentless strength. Would the fight for their future blur the lines of community and friendship? Would it unite them or tear them apart more thoroughly than before? Clara glanced back over her shoulder just as Harrington appeared briefly in the distance. His icy stare pierced her very resolve. In that moment, it became painfully clear this fight wasn't just about standing up to a man. It was about reclaiming their very lives. But would they all stand tall together when the smoke cleared? The answer, she sensed, would unfold in the days to come, shrouded in uncertainty and fraught with danger. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara found herself pacing in her backyard, her heart heavy with the weight of the task ahead. The scent of damp earth filled the air, mingling with the distant laughter of children playing in the streets. It should have felt comforting, but tonight, it felt like a backdrop to her growing anxiety. Her modest yard served as a sanctuary, filled with potted plants and flickering candles she had set up for the meeting. The space, usually a place of solitude and peace, transformed into a gathering ground for change. Clara glanced at her watch for the 5th time, wondering if anyone would show up. She needed them, their voices, their stories, to be part of this plan. As the last rays of light faded and twilight cloaked the neighborhood, soft footsteps approached. Clara turned, and her heart quickened. A group of familiar faces emerged, their expressions a mix of eagerness and trepidation. "Hey, Clara!" called out Ben, the local carpenter, a grin breaking through his usual stoic demeanor. "We're here. Ready to unite for our town." Relief washed over her. One by one, more neighbors filtered in, each clutching steaming cups of coffee and warm pastries Clara offered them. They formed a circle, and Clara felt the warmth of their camaraderie settle around her like a warm blanket. "I'm so glad you're all here," she began, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "This isn't just a meeting, it's a new beginning for us. We all have something to fight for: our homes, our families, and our future." Nods circled the group, and Clara felt tension shift to resolve. They shared ideas, building upon each other's hopes, their voices rising and fading like the gentle wind, crafting a collective vision. Clara felt the fire rekindling within each of them, her anxiety melting away with each shared story. As discussions flowed, Clara's optimism swelled. They planned flyers, community decorations, and even performances for the upcoming event. Laughter erupted at her suggestion to have a pie-eating contest to bring everyone together. It was light-hearted, but it entwined their hearts, reminding them of the joy in solidarity. Yet, even as they chuckled, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Harrington's presence loomed over them like a dark cloud. Would he allow their enthusiasm to flourish? Or would he strike, seeking to quench this burgeoning spirit before it took root? Just then, Clara's neighbor, Mrs. Parker, leaned in, eyes gleaming but voice barely above a whisper. "What if we reach out to the neighboring towns? There are others who could join this fight with us." We could be stronger together. Clara's heart skipped a beat. The idea sparked a new flame in her. There was strength in numbers, a chorus against the looming threats. Yes. Let us spread the word beyond our town. She exclaimed, the thought igniting something deep within her. We'll bring in allies, make our voices ring louder. The group erupted in agreement, their faces brightening with renewed determination. They knew they had to counter Harrington's threats before he raised his hand in retaliation. Time was of the essence. But just as Clara began to feel invincible, the sound of distant shouting interrupted their excitement. The laughter faded, the air thickened with tension as the group fell silent. What was that? A whispered voice trembled in the quiet. Clara's heart sank, her earlier resolve shaken. Was it Harrington? Had he come to silence them already? An icy shiver ran down her spine as she locked eyes with Ben. They both knew that the moment of truth was upon them. We need to find out, Clara said, her heart racing once more. With a nod from Ben, they all stood, anxiety molding into a collective grit. They were prepared, no matter the fallout. But as they stepped outside, what awaited them remained hidden in the shadows, ready to deliver a blow they never anticipated. Would they be able to rally together once more, or was this the beginning of something more perilous? The air outside felt electric, charged with a mix of fear and the thrill of solidarity. The neighbors glanced at one another, their breaths shallow and quick, but there was determination in their eyes. Clara stepped forward, her heart pounding in sync with the distant shouts. Let us go, she urged, her voice strong despite the fluttering in her chest. We can't back down now. As they moved toward the sound, the shadows around them seemed to stretch like fingers, trying to pull them back into uncertainty. Clara's mind raced with possibilities. She thought of Harrington, the man who had tried to intimidate them. He thrived in chaos, feeding on fear and dissent. Would he be leading the fray tonight? They reached the edge of her yard and peered onto the street. A small group had gathered at the corner, where flickering lamplight painted eerie shapes on the pavement. Clara squinted, trying to make sense of it all. What is happening? Ben muttered, stepping closer to get a better view. I don't know, Clara replied, trying to steady her breath. Then, she saw it. A protest, but not just any protest. It was a vibrant display of banners and handmade signs. They resonated with power: protect our homes. Stand with Clara. And together we rise. The sound of chants filled the air, but they were mixed with a cacophony of voices, all rising in defiance against something. A realization washed over Clara. They were not alone. The neighboring towns had indeed heard their call. A wave of relief surged through her, but it was quickly overtaken by a fierce determination. This was the moment they needed to seize. Look! Mrs. Parker exclaimed, pointing to a familiar face marching at the front. A neighbor from 2 streets over, Emily, a single mom who had rallied others around her cause in past years. Emily! Clara called out, her voice straining to cut through the noise. Emily's eyes brightened as she spotted Clara and the group. She broke away from the raucous crowd, rushing over breathlessly. Clara! We came to support you. When we heard about Harrington's plans, we couldn't stand by. Joy mixed with disbelief in Clara's chest. You came to fight with us? Absolutely. We're all in this together. Behind Clara, she felt the breath of her neighbors, a collective sigh of exhilaration. They had become part of something bigger than themselves. As Emily explained how other towns had united, Clara noticed a shift among her group. They weren't just gathered for a meeting anymore, they were participants in a movement, a burgeoning assembly that could no longer be ignored. But then, a thunderous shout pierced the air, and Clara's heart sank again. She turned just in time to see Harrington's figure emerge from the shadows, flanked by a few boisterous supporters. His eyes were dark, filled with disdain and malice. What is this nonsense? Harrington yelled, voice booming. You think your little gathering will change anything? You're a joke. Clara felt her blood boil, but she also felt the hands of her friends on her back, steadying her. This was it. They had come too far to back down now. Drawing a deep breath, she stepped forward, ready to meet the challenge. "We are not a joke," she declared, her voice strong and unwavering. "We are your neighbors, your community. And tonight, we stand united." The air crackled with tension. Clara couldn't tell whether it was anticipation or the threat of a storm, but she knew this was a defining moment for all of them. What would happen next? Would they endure Harrington's wrath and emerge stronger, or would fear seep back in, clouding their courage? As the chants of the crowd grew louder around her, she stood firm, knowing the time to truly fight was just beginning. What would it cost them? And would they find the strength to confront what lay ahead? The ground seemed to tremble beneath Clara's feet as she met Harrington's glare. She could see a flicker of surprise in his eyes, maybe even a hint of uncertainty, masked by a silvery smirk. The crowd around her shifted, a wave of momentum, their backs straightening with shared resolve. The chant surged, louder now as neighbors rallied behind her. "Back down, Harrington!" shouted someone from the crowd. It was James, the retired firefighter, his voice hoarse but fiery. "We're not going anywhere." "That's right." Clara felt the energy wrap around her like a warm blanket. "We're not afraid of you or your threats anymore." Each word struck the air with conviction, igniting an energy that bounced back from her neighbors. Harrington's supporters shuffled uneasily. Clara caught sight of a young woman, her face pale as she glanced nervously between Clara and Harrington, uncertainty clouding her expression. Was she caught between two worlds, fear of the bully and hope in the resolve of the community? "Do you really think you can challenge my authority?" Backyard gossip 1T changed the facts. Harrington spat, his words dripping with disdain, but there was an edge in his voice, too. He was searching for a crack in their armor. Emily surged forward, fists clenched at her sides. "We won't accept your intimidation any longer. This isn't just about Clara, it's our homes, our lives you're threatening. You think you can bulldoze us into silence? You're wrong." The crowd erupted, the power of collective voices vibrating through the air like an electric pulse. Clara felt every heartbeat in unison, a powerful reminder that they were not mere bystanders, they were defenders. "Together we can fight back." Someone else shouted, her face bursting with passion. "For every family in this town." Clara looked to her left and right, searching the faces of her friends and neighbors. She saw Mrs. Parker's eyes gleaming with determination and Ben's face steady, muscles tensed, ready to support whatever came next. A flicker of doubt threatened to slip into her mind, but she ground it down, focusing instead on the fire igniting their resolve. With each chant, each shout of solidarity, she felt her own fear begin to dissolve. What she once believed were insurmountable obstacles began to look more like a path they were carving together. The connections forged in this moment were inseparable, they were a force unharnessed. "I stand with you," Clara shouted, a fierce joy lifting her spirits. "For every child, for every lost home, for every laugh we'll share when this is all over. We deserve to live without fear." As Harrington's ugly glare simmered with frustration, Clara witnessed the conviction ripple through her community. The unified energy felt palpable, contagious even. It washed over her in waves, sending tremors of hope through her veins. But before she could marvel at the power they had conjured, she noticed a flurry of movement at the edge of the crowd. A new figure appeared, his face obscured by the dim light. He pushed past the throngs, urgency in his stride. "Harrington." The newcomer's voice boomed, startling everyone. Clara felt the shift in the air, this was different. Who was this man? Did he come to help? She turned her focus, unsure of what would unfold. Would he solidify the strength of their movement or tip the scales back toward Harrington's chaos? The anticipation filled her chest, every eye glued to the stranger. Time seemed to hang in the air as the tension thickened. What was he about to reveal? Would this man become an ally or an obstacle that further complicated their fight for what was right? The newcomers stepped closer, and the crowd whispered among themselves, the tension crackling like static. Clara couldn't make out his features, but his intensity was unmistakable. She felt her heart race a little faster, each beat synchronized with the mounting hopes of her community. Harrington. He repeated, this time louder, cutting through the murmurs like a knife. You need to listen to me. Harrington's bravado faltered, just for a flicker, as he sized up the man who dared to challenge him. Clara leaned forward, determined to catch every word. The tension hung thick, weighing heavily on everyone's shoulders. The stranger finally emerged from the shadows, tall and broad-shouldered, an aura of authority surrounding him. Clara noticed the badge on his jacket, then a badge she'd only seen in the hands of lawmen. The realization sent a ripple of relief through the crowd. A little more confidence filled her soul. Maybe he was there to help. My name is Deputy Harris, he announced, his voice calm but firm. I've heard about the troubles here. You've been facing some real injustices. A murmur swept through the onlookers. People whispered his name, unsure what this meant for their stand against Harrington. I'm not here to take sides, Harris continued, holding up a hand. But there are rules, laws that protect your rights, and I mean to uphold them. Clara could hardly breathe. This was exactly what they needed. They had been fighting informally, rallying, making their voices known, but this man represented authority. Real authority. Your threats don't scare us, Harrington spat back, his bravado resurfacing like a wounded animal snapping in its last moments of defiance. You think you can change anything here? This is private property. Harris didn't waver. Even private property comes with responsibilities. You can't intimidate these people into submission. The law protects their homes, their rights. Clara felt the energy shift again, a wave of hope sloshing against the shores of their fear. It was contagious. People's expressions lit up, fueled by this unexpected beacon of support. Dare to look at the people you've tried to tear down, Harris urged, glancing at the faces in the crowd. They are not afraid. How could you side with them? Harrington growled. They're nothing but a bunch of stop. Clara jumped in, her voice slicing through Harrington's arrogance like a warm knife through butter. We are families, we are neighbors, and we are standing up for ourselves. You may think you can bulldoze us with your money, but we have something you'll never understand. Harrington sneered, his sneering face tightening like a fist. What's that? A handful of dreams? Unity. Clara proclaimed, her voice soaring higher, more powerful. These people are united. We stand together against your tyranny, and no amount of intimidation will last. You can't take our homes or our spirit. We're fighting for each other. The crowd erupted around her, cheers and fists raised high, the energy spiraling up to the heavens like fireworks igniting passion and resolve. Harris stepped forward, a protective figure against the backdrop of escalating resolve. What you're doing is brave, he said to Clara, his eyes sincere. Keep fighting. Together, we can make sure no one can take what is rightfully yours. But before Clara could relish this moment, Harrington turned, his eyes wild and desperate, scanning the crowd like a cornered animal. You think I'll back down? You haven't seen the last of me. As the crowd huddled closer, Clara knew this confrontation was just beginning. With Harrington backed into a corner, he was more dangerous than ever. What was his next move? How far would he go to maintain his grip on their homes? The looming uncertainty felt oppressive. Clara instinctively reached for Emily's hand, warmth grounding her amid the storm brewing ahead. Tension thickened again in the air, but so did their strength. They would face whatever Harrington threw their way, unified and unyielding. But would it be enough? And what secrets lay in the depth of Harrington's plans that nobody knew? The gathering outside Clara's house crackled with energy, but the weight of uncertainty loomed like dark clouds overhead. Clara felt the pulse of unity around her neighbors, friends, families all standing together. Yet Harrington's desperate threat hung like a storm in the air, ready to unleash turmoil on their fragile community. "The fight is just beginning," Harrington warned, voice dripping with venom. His eyes flickered over the crowd, darting from one hopeful face to another. "You'll regret standing against me." "Regret?" Clara stepped forward, heart pounding in her chest. "Regret is cowering in the shadows, letting fear keep you from doing what's right. We won't back down, Harrington. We've fought too hard." With every word, the crowd surged with her, their voices lifting into a chorus of defiance. "Together. We are strong. Together." They chanted, a tide of collective resolve washing over the threats looming ahead. Clara felt the heat of determination radiate through their bodies. They were not a scattered band of misfits anymore, they were a force. Harrington faltered, his swagger cracking under the pressure of their voices. Clara realized in that moment they were more than just neighbors. They were a family, woven together by the shared fabric of struggle and strength. "You think this uproar means anything? I have resources. I have allies." Harrington barked, desperation clawing at the edges of his bravado, but Clara sensed the trembling beneath his words. The facade of control was unraveling. "Those who rely on fear will always falter." Harris interjected, stern yet composed. "Power is not just about wealth, it's about the strength within a community that stands together. You can't intimidate their love." Harrington's arrogance melted slightly, replaced by a flicker of concern. Clara held on to that flicker as if it were a beacon guiding them through the tumult. She felt an overwhelming urge to harness that hope. "Listen!" she shouted, and the crowd quieted. "We've lived in the shadows for too long. This community has lost too much to silence. Today, we have a choice. We can either let his manipulation drown us or we can rise up, united in our strength." The crowd erupted again, their voices intertwining in a symphony of solidarity. "We will rise," they called, and Clara's heart soared, the energy igniting into something bigger than herself. "But remember," she urged, a note of caution threading through her passion. "Harrington is desperate. A cornered man is the most dangerous. We must prepare ourselves for what comes next." With that, Clara gathered Harris, Emily, and several other neighbors in a huddle. They began strategizing, contemplating every move, analyzing every possibility. Ideas flowed like a river, the concept of a town hall meeting, gathering support from neighboring communities, and reaching out to local media to spotlight their plight. Clara felt her focus sharpen. No longer was she simply defending her home, now she was building a movement. As night settled around them, the atmosphere pulsed with warmth and camaraderie. They laid plans to unify their voices further and gather others to join the fight. Clara's resolve hardened like steel. Together, they would shine a light on Harrington's deceit. But even as the excitement bubbled over, Clara sensed the shadow of doubt lingering in the back of her mind. Would people continue to stand by once faced with Harrington's retaliation? What consequences would emerge from their united stand? As the group dispersed, Clara found herself lingering in the glow of twilight, reflecting on the work ahead. Each face she'd seen tonight, bright with conviction, felt imprinted in her heart. They had all cast aside fear to fight for something greater. The days ahead would not be easy. They would face battles, and there would be suffering. But the ember of hope flickered brightly in her soul. With every voice raised, with every grievance shared, they would take their lives back. As she turned a corner in her street, Clara caught a glimpse of her children playing, their laughter intermingling with the murmur of distant chants that echoed in her mind. She took a deep breath, the weight of their world resting on her shoulders, but it felt lighter somehow, buoyed by the unity she had witnessed today. Clara Caldwell was no longer just a seamstress. She was a weaver of change, stitching together a community determined to stand tall against adversity. What remained was uncertain. Tremors of fear and excitement danced within her. But as she looked around at the vibrant life that pulsed through Maplewood, she felt a fierce smile cross her face. Together, they would face whatever came next. A new Maplewood was being born, one that refused to cower in the dark. They would fight for a brighter future, and her heart swelled with the promise of triumph. But it was up to them all. The town had united, and now it was time to show the world silence was no longer an option. The fight for justice would not end, it was just beginning. So what will you do? Will you join the fight for justice and change? Stand tall for your community. You need to subscribe now, not just for this story but for more that will inspire and ignite change. Leave a like now to fuel the fire of this movement. Comment your thoughts on this monumental stand and how you can contribute. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who believe in the power of community. Don't wait not even one more second to share your passion for justice and unity. Be a part of something bigger.